Almost homeless and living in her car. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. Well, if you notice that my kitchen and my house is an absolute mess, you're right. And it's because we are getting ready for the kitchen renovation people to come in. They're going to totally dismantle the entire kitchen because we're having all brand new cabinets, brand new everything in all areas over here and over here. So we've been pulling everything out, entirely everything out of here. And you can see out here on Grandma's porch, it's a big mess. All the rooms are a mess because we're pulling everything out. But I wanted to come on here and talk about the woman who, the girl, she was really a young woman who almost became homeless living in her car because it was her own fault. Now, there are people that end up homeless at no fault of their own. But this was not the situation. Okay, there are different scenarios, different reasons why people are homeless. And some of them, they've lost their job, they've gone through a major life change. It was no fault of their own. And so things can happen. Okay, so have great compassion for homeless people. And yet, in this situation, this girl who's in her mid to late 20s had wonderful parents. She grew up in a wonderful home, wonderful situation, been blessed beyond belief in her life. College education, she threw away 3 times. And her parents bought her cars. They bought her everything. Didn't spoil her. They taught her right. They did not spoil her in any way. They raised her right. They took her to church. They gave an amazing childhood to all their children, not just her, but to all their children. And yet, when she turned about 18, she just completely threw everything away in her life. And this is not an isolated story because I know other people and other families that have gone through the exact same thing. And so she became extraordinarily disruptive at home. She got involved with a married man who had 5 kids. He was a much older married man on the sleazy side. Here she came from this beautiful, beautiful family. And then what happened was she, ended up with this sleazy character. And from that point on, everything went downhill. And so finally her parents couldn't put up with it. The father got sick, trying to, help her and figured out the mother started to get sick. So they just said no more. So finally, she couldn't afford an apartment. She had a job. She threw her college education away numerous times at the parents' expense. And so finally what she did was they decided to get her, it was like a subsidized apartment, a beautiful little apartment, beautiful. So they got her this apartment. Finally, it was like a year waiting list, and they had to go through really, really challenging times because she was so disruptive, so disrespectful. She had raging issues, all kinds of things. They tried to get her to go for some kind of therapy, but she didn't want therapy. She did not want any kind of therapy, and she was over the age of 18, and so they couldn't make her. They did everything. These were incredible parents that people would have dreamed of, homes that, a lifestyle, that opportunities that most people her age would have dreamed of. And she threw it all away. And so disrespectful to the people that loved her, disrespectful to her siblings, disrespectful to everybody, got involved in one terrible relationship after the other. She had this boyfriend she had for years from high school, and finally he dumped her after a number of years because he couldn't put up with what she was doing. So she moved into this subsidized type place, which was lower rent, but it was a very nice place. And her parents paid the rent some of the times. They made sure the rent was paid because she'd go spend every paycheck she made, threw her money away, very, very irresponsible. And so the parents didn't want to see her get, thrown out because they knew how hard it was to get an apartment like that. It was such a blessing to have that apartment, but she absolutely did not care. And the parents even the mother went over there and cleaned the apartment whenever they did the inspections. I mean, the daughter lived like a slob. She put on all kinds of weight. She didn't take drugs or alcohol or anything like that, but she got involved with numerous men. She even bought a guy that got out of jail, a car, ruined her credit that her parents had established for her. Wonderful. She had had perfect credit. Her mother and father had established for her through the years. She ruined all that by buying this guy a car. It got the father so sick and upset because the father had to get involved to get the car back through, I think, the sheriff. The sheriff had to go out there and get the car. I mean, it was just a nightmare. And she continued to go down this road of terrible decisions, disrespect to the people that were wonderful and amazing to her, choosing not only guy relationships, but female relationships as friends that were using her. She'd give her money away. She'd throw her money away. She would get paid, and as soon as she got paid, it was gone the next day. I mean, it was just really something. So anyhow, fast forward at a couple years, late 20s or something, still irresponsible, parents trying to hold her up, and she gets an eviction, what she thought was an eviction notice. So, the parents knew that they could not bring her back. They did not want to buy her a place because she was so irresponsible. The responsibility would have been all on her. So they didn't do that either. And so what basically ended up happening, they thought, she's going to live in her car. We're going to have to buy her a minivan, and she's going to be a homeless person living in the car. Well, that was, and I think it kind of was a wake-up call to the daughter. It was sort of a wake-up call because several days went by before she could get into the office to find out what was really going on. Well, by that time, the parents had sort of come up with some kind of plan. The parents were sick inside over the whole situation. The daughter was yelling and screaming and ranting and raving over the phone, and it was terrible. And then the daughter finally called. It was like, on a certain day, and she said, I went to the office and they said they had sent that out to everybody just to let them know that if they didn't get, through the paperwork process the way they were supposed to, they would be evicted. So she had misread that whole thing. So she was almost thrown out of her apartment. She was almost thrown out and homeless. And this can happen to people that make terrible decisions, as she did. Remember, these parents were incredible parents. I knew these parents. I know these parents. They were incredible parents. This adult child was so irresponsible. They did not spoil her. Okay, people think, she must have been spoiled. No, they did all the right things, but she got involved along the way with the wrong people. And her mother even warned her about this one person she saw. She didn't even know her daughter was already involved with this guy. She said, stay away from him. He's bad news. That was the married man. And so, but she didn't listen. And she, to this day, is not listening. But I think she learned her lesson. And, that she has to step up and be responsible, because otherwise she would have been homeless, pushing a cart on the street, because she doesn't even take care of her car. Her car was trashed. Her life was trashed. All the blessings that she had in her life, most of all her family, she had trashed. She trashed her looks. She trashed her health. No drugs, no alcohol. She just chose to make bad decisions. Okay? But be compassionate to the homeless, because many homeless people don't have that story. They're there for other reasons that were out of their control. Okay? From my house to yours, may God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe.